Levi Strauss & Company generates over $6 billion in annual revenue today. The company's signature 501 jeans remain the best-selling denim pants in history, with over 200 million pairs sold since their creation. The man behind this empire arrived in San Francisco in 1853, with nothing but fabric samples in his luggage. Levi Strauss was a 24-year-old German immigrant who couldn't speak fluent English and had never owned a business. Chapter 1. A Peddler in the Gold Rush. Strauss landed in California during the tail end of the gold rush. While thousands of prospectors dug for gold in the Sierra Nevada mountains, he saw a different opportunity. Miners needed supplies, and San Francisco's population had exploded from 1,000 to 25,000 in just 4 years. He opened a dry goods store selling fabric, clothing, and general merchandise to the mining camps. His older brothers ran a successful textile business in New York, shipping him canvas, denim, and other materials to sell at markup. The business worked. By 1866, Strauss had moved his store to a larger building and employed several workers. He wasn't wealthy, but he was stable. The real fortune came from a customer complaint 13 years later. Chapter 2. The Tailor's Patent. Jacob Davis was a Latvian tailor in Reno who bought fabric from Strauss to make work pants for miners and laborers. In 1872, a customer's wife asked Davis to make pants that wouldn't rip apart when her husband loaded his pockets with ore samples. Davis added metal rivets at the stress points, pocket corners, and the base of the button fly. The riveted pants were indestructible. Word spread, and Davis couldn't make them fast enough. He wanted to patent the rivet technique, but the $68 filing fee was more than he could afford. Davis wrote to Strauss proposing a partnership. Strauss would pay for the patent, and they would split the profits. Strauss agreed immediately. On May 20th, 1873, they received U.S. Patent 139,121 for Improvement in Fastening Pocket Openings. Chapter 3. Manufacturing at Scale. Strauss moved production from small tailor shops to a factory system. He hired seamstresses and cutters, installed industrial sewing machines, and standardized the production process. The pants were made from denim sourced from the Amoskeag Manufacturing Company in New Hampshire, dyed with indigo imported from India. Strauss called them waist overalls because the word jeans wouldn't enter common usage for another 80 years. The riveted pants sold for $1.50 per pair, equivalent to about $40 today. Coal miners in Pennsylvania bought them. Railroad workers in Wyoming ordered them by the dozens. Ranchers in Texas wore them until the denim turned white from washing. By 1890, Levi Strauss & Company employed over 500 workers and produced 200,000 garments annually. Strauss himself never married, lived in a modest apartment above his office, and donated significant portions of his profits to orphanages and universities. Chapter 4. Survival through Disaster. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake destroyed most of the city, including Strauss's factory and headquarters. The fire that followed burned for 3 days and consumed what the earthquake hadn't toppled. Strauss had died in 1902, leaving the company to his 4 nephews. They relocated operations temporarily to Oakland and began rebuilding. The company's financial records had burned, but the patent and trademark survived in a fireproof safe. Within 6 months, they had a new factory running. The disaster actually helped the business. Reconstruction workers needed durable clothing, and Levi's overalls were the obvious choice. Sales doubled between 1906 and 1910. The company added new products: work shirts, jackets, and children's overalls. But the core product remained the riveted denim pants, now stamped with a leather patch showing 2 horses trying to pull apart a pair of Levi's. Chapter 5. From workwear to fashion. Denim remained purely functional clothing until the 1950s. Factory workers wore it. Farmers wore it. Nobody wore denim to dinner or social events. That changed when Marlon Brando wore jeans in The Wild One in 1953, and James Dean wore them in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. Teenagers started buying Levi's to look like the movie stars. Parents and school administrators banned jeans as rebellious and inappropriate. The controversy made them more popular. Levi Strauss & Company went public in 1971 at $47 per share. The company was worth $1.6 billion overnight. By the 1980s, a single pair of 501s sold every second somewhere in the world. Fashion designers like Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren launched premium denim lines at triple the price. But Levi's maintained 30% of the American jeans market through volume and brand recognition. Chapter 6. The decline and reinvention. Levi's market share collapsed in the 1990s. The company lost half its value between 1996 and 2003. Younger customers bought brands like Diesel, True Religion, and 7 for All Mankind. Department stores stocked designer jeans at $200 per pair, while Levi's sat on clearance racks at $30. The company had become uncool, associated with dads and discount stores. Levi's closed over 50 factories and laid off thousands of workers. The family bought back all public shares in 1996 to avoid hostile takeover attempts. The turnaround came from embracing heritage marketing. Instead of chasing trends, Levi's emphasized its history as the original jean. The company reissued vintage styles from the 1940s and 1950s at premium prices. Collaborations with streetwear brands like Supreme and high-fashion designers brought credibility with younger buyers. By 2019, when Levi's went public again, the stock opened at $22.22 per share and jumped 32% on the first day. Levi Strauss never intended to create fashion. He sold fabric to miners and agreed to patent a tailor's invention because it seemed like a practical investment. The riveted pants succeeded because they solved a real problem: clothes that didn't fall apart after a week of hard labor. That simple innovation created a product worn by over 1 billion people across 150 years. The company still manufactures jeans using the same basic design from 1873, with copper rivets at the pocket corners and a leather patch on the waistband. Strauss died wealthy, but not extravagantly rich. His true fortune came after his death, built by successive generations who recognized that durability and authenticity were worth more than chasing every fashion trend.